Hello everyone, my name is FIDE Master Blessings Mutabi from Botswana. Um, I'm here today to share my wonderful game that I played over the recent past days. I was playing an OTB tournament here in Botswana. I played against the FIDE Master rated 2000 and I was playing black. And you know what I play with black. I play the French. Bonjour. um I'm here to share my game, my wonderful game, my beautiful game that I played. It was so far one of my best games, even though I blundered at the end. But we play to take our L's and learn from our mistakes. Here I am today sharing my game with you, all my people. um okay. I was using black, as I said, and my opponent was using white. He opened with a very common move, e4, and I replied with the e6, which is a common move for French. And he played d4. Then I played d5, trying to make distraction on the center. And then he made an advanced variation. Usually I feel like when my opponent has passed, he gives me that that authority to break the pawns on the center. I can play f6, which is one of the best moves in the French opening. I can play c5, which is one of the best moves which you can play in order to break the pawns on d4 and d5. So I played c5, and then my opponent took the pawn on c5, and I was like, what? I never saw this, ever since I played chess. I never saw this. It was my first time seeing this. Actually, I was saying, this is a FIDE Master, so let me hear, uh, let me see what he will do. The continuation after that. And then I took with the bishop, b takes c5, and my opponent played knight f3, trying to develop on the king side, and I played knight c6. Whenever I play knight sixes, I play it for to make a distraction on the pawns on the d4 and the e4 e5 square. So that is why I play knight c6. I'm putting pressure on those two pawns, But now that my opponent has already exchanged the d pawn, so the only pawn that I'm pressurizing now is the pawn on e5. So my opponent played bishop to d3. I was like, maybe he wants to castle. He doesn't want a lot of things. But for me, I was seeing that white is just relaxed. I'm the one whose pieces are very active, and I played knight g to e7. Which is a move that I like mostly when I play the French. Normally I play it so that I can advance my knight to f5, to that outpost. So I really love the knight going to f5, and my opponent castled, and I played queen to c6. Now queen to c6. Remember I was saying when I play knight c6, I'm putting a pressure on those pawns on d4 and on the e5 and the e5 pawn. So now I played queen c6 in order to put pressure on the e5 pawn. And I just want to tell my opponent that just protect your pawn, keep on protecting pawn. For me, that pawn, it might be an isolan. And my opponent played rook to e1. And I played knight g6. Knight g6, I'm also putting pressure on. I didn't want to play knight f5 so early, because if I play knight f5, my opponent will take with the bishop on it will take with the bishop on f5, then my pawn on d5 is hanging. So that is why I played knight g6 in order to attack that pawn, that lonely pawn. And my opponent played queen e2. Queen e2. It wasn't a bad move though for white, I can say. And I played bishop d. I didn't know why I played bishop d7. Bishop d7. Maybe I just wanted to play it like a waiting move, but I feel like the move that I could have made here is knight to b4, trying to take out the bishop, his bishop. That could be better, but I played bishop to d7. And my opponent played h4, and I was like, hey, I never seen this before. Even my coach Goran never played me like this, so I was like, but it's kind of cool. Look. So he played h4, and I was very stressed. I took like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, trying to see what is happening here. I didn't want to castle. So I played my knight back to e7, and my opponent played a3. He played pawn to a3, trying to avoid that knight from coming to b4. Remember, I wanted to play my knight to b4 just to threaten the bishop on d3. So he played a3 to avoid some certain moves for black. And I played a6 because I saw what is coming. I saw b4 coming. So the reason why I was playing a6 is to open a space for my bishop. So my opponent played b4, which is the move that I was expecting, and I played bishop to a7. Bishop to a7, it was an interesting move for me. I felt like my bishop is a sniper after all. His king is not just safe. He played bishop to b7. I consider that bishop as a bad bishop in this game because it couldn't have any activity after all. After all, that pawn on e5 is blocking a lot of things. So I can't consider it as a bad bishop for white. And I played rook c8. I played rook c8 because I was just thinking forward, for some coming moves. I just wanted to align my pieces on the c file so that later on I can be able to win the file, I can say. And I taking the c2 pawn. I taking the c2 pawn. Tactically or strategically, I can say. My opponent played g6, which even I considered it as a weakness for white also, because I kind of have some moves which are coming. I kind of have knight f5 coming, taking the g3 pawn, and I kind of have f6 move which I could have played in this game, but I didn't play it. And I played knight f5. That is my favorite move. I played knight f5. I taken the pawn on g3. It was kind of a nice move for me. And my opponent played king g2, going out from the pin. And I played knight cd4. Trying to make some exchanges, because I felt like maybe somehow this game can go for an end game. And my opponent took with the knight on f3. He took my piece on d4, and I took with the knight on d4 also, which is a very quite interesting move also. And my opponent didn't take my knight because maybe he didn't want to remove his bishop. He didn't want to sell out his black colored bishop. and he played queen g4, which was an interesting move for him, attacking my knight and also attacking on g7. It was quite an interesting move. But I made an interesting move. Guess what? I played knight takes c2, forking the crooks, and I was trying to force him to I was trying to force him to take my knight on c2, and also I was expecting a pin. I was just risking my everything so that even if he pins with on the c2 with the rook on c2, I can be able to put my pieces in place for attack. So my opponent played rook c1. My opponent plays rook c1. Pinning my knight. I played an interesting move, queen b6, attacking on f2. It was a quite interesting move. Guess what? I played queen b6. you know I was calculating a lot of moves. I was even thinking that even if it might take with the rook, I'll take with the rook. I'll take with my rook here. Then after that, he's forced to take my rook, and then that is when I can take on f2. So that is the move that I thought. But my opponent went back to f1 to protect his f2 pawn. I don't know what he was thinking. He saw that something might come up here. And then I missed a very, very, very wonderful move. Knight e1 check. I missed the knight e1 check, which is a very quite good move, because if he does, he's forced to take with the rook. If he doesn't take, I'm gonna take the bishop on d3. It's a check, and he's forced to take with the rook, and then I take with the pawn on f2 with the queen. So unfortunately, I didn't see that engine move, to be honest. And then I took his rook on a1, and what he did, he took my pawn on g7 with the queen, and attacking my rook, and I played rook f8. Then from there, he was able to capture my knight on a1. That is what he did. He captured my knight on a1, and I made a move which is bishop b5. It was quite a very good move, though. I felt like I was winning in this game, and my opponent played queen takes h7, taking the pawn and protecting his bishop again. That is what he did. And I made a move which everyone can see, might think is a tactic. I played rook c2, and I was like, and my opponent just smiled, and that is how I resigned my game, because he will play bishop takes here, check, then whatever I take with, the queen will take the rook. So that is how I lost my beautiful game. And I just want to say, when you are playing OTB tournaments, just be careful, with every move that you play. You have to consider every move that you play a good move, and you have to take time to think for good moves. I was really doing that, even though I was just quick and I was motivated to play against a higher rated player than me. But this game really made me to come back to chess. I just wanted to resign. I just wanted to retire from chess at an early age, but I'm back now. I just felt like I can still play more and more games. Thank you so much.